When did you start piecing it together?
Instantly. The second the Washington Post called me and Caitlin Dewey was trying to cut off the legs of the funding, I realized that my friends were my enemies and my enemies were my friends, and the only people that covered the story extensively and accurately were the white nationalist Breitbart. Fascinating, right?
These evil, alt-right,
white racists covered a black girl who was trying to do a tech startup being attacked by the media.
Yeah, well, there's so many people that I think had their political awakening right around when I did. And mine sparked the night that Sam Harris was on Real Time with Bill Maher, and he got into that big fight with Batman, with Ben Affleck. Yeah. Bill Maher, who had been the standard bearer for the left, the most outspoken liberal there is. He's been a standard bearer of the left. And suddenly this guy, Sam Harris, here's this calm guy, lays out a couple Pew statistics, talks about the difference between the nominal Muslim, the Islamist that wants to change things using political power versus the jihadist who wants to use violence. The response from Ben Affleck is, you're gross and racist. And then suddenly the next day, the onus was on Bill Maher and Sam Harris to prove that they weren't racist. It exposed so many things. It exposed lazy thinking of progressives, in this case Ben Affleck, where we're trying to have a complex discussion. You immediately go to these buzzwords. It shuts down the conversation. But it also showed me some other things. For example, the next day, all the newspapers, all the online outlets, now saying, is Bill Maher racist? Bill Maher, I mean, no one can point to evidence of him ever being racist. And then Sam got dragged into that.
Before I became conservative, I was an extreme liberal, stomped down, stone cold liberal, talking about white people are the devil, they came from caves, all this and that. Because I was seeing certain things. I was seeing how white people had certain kind of money, Asians had certain kind of money, and then blacks were like at the bottom of the totem pole. And I'm trying to figure out why. My reasoning was it must be because white man is holding us down. As I got older, I started to get more into business. I've always been self-employed. The Democratic Party were the ones who kept having these high taxes I kept hearing about from black business owners. They're telling me about certain things that I never thought would affect black people because I was always told that the Democrats had our best interests at heart. So I'm like, wait a minute. On the right, they are against high taxes. On the right, they are against abortion. So I'm like, okay, everything that black people need to go forward, the party we vote for seems to be against. If there was any one particular thing that really kind of drove me over the edge was Barack Obama's presidency. I voted for him in 2008, but during that time, a lot of my personal friends went bankrupt. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? What happened to the hope and the change? And I think at that point, that was probably the turning point right there where I was like, okay, I'm starting to see that this presidency for Barack Obama was not the right thing to do. So that was like in 2011. Ever since 2012, my life has been going up and up and up and up. I let go of the victimhood mentality I had before. When I wouldn't get a certain job or when I was not having any money, I would say, oh, it's because I'm black. It's because I'm a victim, all this, that, and the third. When you allow others to make you into a victim, you blame other people. The person you blame for your victimhood status controls you. Everything that you want in life has to come through that individual. And what kind of way is that to live when you hate them, but at the same time you're relying upon them for all of your daily needs, your resources? When I let go of the victim mentality, that's when I was able to take control of my life. That's what the whole victimhood narrative is. People that are afraid to go out on their own and be somebody. So that is my red pill experience. Peace.
I decided to meet my enemies. I was a proud feminist. So for 1 year, I traveled North America, meeting the leaders and followers of the men's rights movement. Before making the Red Pill movie, I was a feminist of about 10 years. And I thought I was well-versed on gender equality issues. But it wasn't until I met men's rights activists that I finally started to consider the other side of the gender equality equation. Well, after years of researching and fact-checking what the men's rights activists were telling me, there is no denying that there are many human rights issues that uniquely or disproportionately affect men. Paternity fraud, The United States Selective Service in the case of a draft, workplace deaths, war deaths, suicide, overwhelmingly men, sentencing disparity, life expectancy, child custody, child support, false rape allegations, criminal court bias, misandry, failure to launch, boys falling behind in education, homelessness, veterans issues, infant male genital mutilation, lack of parental choice once a child is conceived, lack of resources for male victims of domestic violence. These are men's issues, and most people can't name one. Because they think, well, men have all the rights, they have all the power and privilege. But these issues deserve to be acknowledged. They deserve care, attention, and motivation for solutions. The greatest challenge I faced was peeling back the layers of my own bias. It turns out I did meet my enemy while filming. It was my ego saying that I was right and they were subhuman. It doesn't mean I agreed with all that they said, but I saw the immense value in listening to them and trying to see the world through their eyes. So in October 2016, the film was released in theaters and articles and critic reviews started to roll in. Rather than debating the merit of the issues addressed in the film, I became the target of a smear campaign. And people who had never seen the movie protested outside the theater doors, chanting that it was harmful to women. It certainly is not. It's no secret now that I no longer call myself a feminist. I still support women's rights, and I now care about men's rights as well.
You may have noticed that I've been talking to and hanging out with some anti-feminist YouTubers. This has apparently really confused people. There have been thousands of tweets and emails of people freaking out, like, what is going on? After all, Laci Green, am the very pinnacle of a social justice warrior. There's talk that I'm being red-pilled. Skepticism is about questioning even the seemingly unquestionable and being willing to adjust our beliefs as we get new information. So I went down the rabbit hole of anti-SJW videos. I've recently found anti-SJW channels that are well-cited and reasoned, make some interesting points. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I agree with that, or I didn't really think of that. So I decided to reach out to some. And, I was pleasantly surprised. People have been pretty kind to me. And, I'll be honest, I didn't really expect that. No judgment, no vitriol. I even feel like I have a really good connection with a couple of new friends. I think the definition of harm is being pushed too far in regard to political speech, that this heightened level of sensitivity is actually resulting in some censorship. Through open dialogue, we can parse out ideas and really see what they're made of.
Throughout your 20s, you were a Marxist.
Yes. When I was 20 years old, that was when I first came across some stuff by Marx. And what he said seemed to explain the world around me. And I was still a Marxist after taking Milton Friedman's course. But one summer in the government was enough to let me say, this government is really not the answer. I mean, that is...
Milton Friedman didn't cure you, but the federal government did.
The federal government did. So never say the federal government doesn't do anything. My job was to study minimum wage setting in Puerto Rico. And of course, I discovered that as they kept raising the minimum...
Department of Labor, or
yes.
You're collecting statistics for something? Okay,
yeah,
all right, got it.
For a report. Right. And I noticed that as they kept raising the minimum wage, the employment kept going down. And of course, economics was saying that was why, but the unions said that hurricanes came through, a series of hurricanes during the time they collected the data, and that it destroyed the sugar cane in the field, so there was less required to be processed. And so the question is, which of those is right? So I spent the whole summer trying to figure out how would I test this? And finally I came in one day and announced to the little group here in the office that I have it. That what we need are statistics on the amount of sugar cane standing in the field before the hurricane came through. And I'm waiting for the congratulations, and I can see looks of shock in the room, like this idiot has stumbled on something that will ruin us all, And I realized I was concerned as to whether this law was beneficial or not beneficial to low-income people. They were concerned because this law was providing 1/3 of the income of the U.S. Department of Labor. And once you begin to see that the government agencies have their own self-interest, quite aside from whatever they're theoretically supposed to be doing.
So they were behaving precisely as a neoclassical, precisely as Milton Friedman would have predicted, they were in pursuit of their own incentives.
That's right.
They were not trying to establish justice on the face of the earth. They were trying to hold on to pretty good jobs.
Yes.
Got it.
How devoted were you to the Trotskyite revolutionary cause?
Oh, completely. The wonderful thing about being at university in the 70s was that we were completely insulated from reality. We were paid a grant, which I was quite easily able to live on for most of the time, and we were protected from reality. And then as soon as that came to an end and I had to go out and earn a living, and I began to earn a living very quickly as a newspaper reporter, I was forced into contact with the world whose existence I had previously kept from myself, and I was suddenly compelled to recognize that all kinds of people who I'd previously thought of as servants of a corrupt and doomed state, whether they were policemen or conservative councillors or firemen or bureaucrats of one kind or another, were actually perfectly normal human beings with good intentions. And so that eats away at your conviction that you're right and everybody else is wrong. So at the same time, I was reading a book by Arthur Koestler, not one of the famous ones, one called Arrival and Departure, which is actually about the problems of world reformers and how most of them want to reform the world because they've got something wrong with them. This seemed to me to be more or less accurate. And it plunged me into a train of thought from which I emerged a couple of years later thinking, I've had enough of this, it doesn't really work. And I actually did what most revolutionaries don't do. I formally resigned.
And I met Tel when I was 18, and we started putting together our magic show. And I guess we were kind of fast-tracked to be Hollywood liberals. I met a man named Tim Jennison. I was then just your kind of standard liberal there in the end of the 80s. And Tim was libertarian. And Tim was also a peacenik. I started giving all the arguments for why the government had to be more powerful and do all these things. And Tim said a really simple sentence to me. Do you think it's okay to punish people who've done nothing wrong? And I said no. And then he said, then why is it okay to reward people who've done nothing right? Can't you see that you can't reward without punishing? They are the same thing. And then Tim started saying, you know, you're so against force. You've never hit anybody in your life. You are insanely peacenik in terms of the way you see war and what the country should do. Why do you think it's so okay for the government to use force to get things done that you think are good ideas? He said, you're wrong. You're an asshole. Think about this. Turns out to me, that's the way you argue with me, because that's the way you show respect. You're saying, I'm really telling what I really think. I'm not going to try to trick you or try to be nice or suck you in. I'm just telling what I think. And I started thinking, one really good definition of government, that the government are the guys with the guns. And we are the people who tell the government what they can do. So in my morality, I shouldn't be able to tell anyone to do something with a gun that I wouldn't do myself. If you asked me, would I use a gun to stop a murder? Yeah. Would I use a gun to stop a rape? Yeah. Stop robbery? Yeah. To protect our country and our way of life? Yeah. Would I use a gun to build a library? No. Do I think libraries are really important? Wicked important. So will I give my money to help someone build a library? Yeah. Will I ask other people to give their money to help build a library? Yeah. Will I beg? Yeah. Will I lie? A little bit. Will I use a gun to get someone to build a library? No. And that is, in a nutshell, my entire view of politics.
I had always been on the left. I hated Ronald Reagan. I thought Republicans were stupid and evil. And it was only when I'd gone to India and really tried to understand a traditional, religious, hierarchical, gender-stratified society, tried to understand it in their terms. I didn't try to just bring in my own Western left-leaning perspectives. It was only then that I was able to sort of get inside their minds and their moral system and see that there were alternative moral worlds. They each had their own logic. since I was coming out of a psychological literature that was very focused on secular ethics about justice and fairness, and then I began studying disgust and looking at the broader moral domain that almost all societies have. And so that led me to think, well, if there's an emotion which is about seeing our lower, baser animal biological nature, is there an opposite emotion? Is there an emotion that we feel when we see some manifestation of our higher, nobler nature? And I read the set of Thomas Jefferson's letters. And in one letter, he describes the feelings you get from reading great fiction. He describes the feeling of having your sentiments be elevated. Does it not dilate your breast or give you an open feeling in your chest when you see these acts of beauty and kindness and gratitude? I thought, wow, that's exactly it. And so because I'd been studying disgust, I then started studying its opposite, which I and some others called moral elevation. So there's this kind of vertical metaphor of elevation and degradation. Mm-hmm. And so having this language of elevation and disgust just really has helped me see a lot of things. It's just broadened my thinking about morality, and that's what allowed me, finally, to understand conservatives. I was able to now listen to conservative talk radio and Christian religious radio and see, rather than just saying, oh, those stupid, terrible people, say like, oh, wow, yeah, I can see that they're striving for certain virtues.
Right. So you started to understand their metaphorical language, essentially.
That's right. And that was kind of like my, great awakening or scales falling from my eyes. I kind of just pulled out the implants from my eyes and I stopped seeing everything through a partisan lens. And I'm not on any side now.
I used to be a big fan of this site called BuzzFeed, and you're really only getting your only news from feminism.com, basically. You kind of become a feminist, and it's really hard because every single day you have feminism is about equality shoved down your throat and the wage gap shoved down your throat. I didn't even have a job, but I was so oppressed by that wage gap, I tell you what. When I went to church a lot of times, girls, you have to wear a one piece and you can't show your stomachs, and that really pissed me off. That was my motivating feminism point. I kind of blew it out of proportion.
So what made you stop being a feminist?
I was on BuzzFeed one day. I came across an article and it was about the horrors of how women are treated in the Middle East. Then I saw some feminists almost defending the women for their freedom of religion. Kind of sparked something in the back of my mind. I'm like, why are feminists such a big defender of Islam? They turn around and they're over here and they're hardcore bashing on Christians for longer shorts. Hold up, so wait, why are you bashing people of this faith but not the people of this faith? Why are you... I didn't get it. So then I went to the good old Google and I started to look at the other side.
You actually looked at the other side.
I realized that things like third wave feminism, Black Lives Matter, all these groups that are meant to bring about social justice, all they're doing is dividing. And it's such a horrible, twisted, very sly, liberal, kind of group that is trying to get the votes from women by saying, you're oppressed, vote for the Democratic Party. The three main types of female cancer are breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and feminism. It's a mean joke. I feel bad, but it's true. Facts don't care about your feelings, Ben Shapiro. This is my brother. Organs of feminism. It's very hard to listen to the truth when you're so enveloped in that. Everyone wants to be oppressed and blame their failures on something else than themselves. But once you get over that, you start to see the other side. If you don't get a job, it's probably not because you're a woman. It's probably because you're less qualified. When a girl says they're not a feminist because they actually took to the time to learn about it, you should respect, as a feminist, their opinion because they're also another woman. A lot of people that are strong anti-feminists, if you look, are previous feminists. Hey, I'm not a victim. I'm not going to act like one. I'm going to work my butt off. I'm going to stop blaming other people, and I'm going to be successful. And look, now I'm a woman CEO. They're going to get mad.
Okay, I'm just kidding.
Because we're part of the patriarchy, because we're not feminists, which is actually really funny, because it's feminism, empowering women, let women speak their minds. But if you're not a feminist, dear God.
Lately, I've been giving a lot of thought to the indoctrination I experienced while attending public school, and getting my degree in history at university. I was given a short story about a British colonial in Australia who was horrified when he saw an Aboriginal man raping sometimes multiple women a day and bashing a baby's skull in with a rock. When I expressed my own horror to this, I was told that I was being, you guessed it, ethnocentric. We were taught that we had racist sexual preferences. I should want to make babies with the tribal stick nostril man as much as the cute blonde football player sitting next to me in class. Then the real nail in the coffin, I was taught to hate my European ancestry because we slaughtered indigenous people. I was taught that the reason why so many countries in Africa can't succeed today is because whites exploited them for their resources. No one mentioned the fact that these countries are better off today because of colonialism. New technology, new governments, resources, railroads, cars, better birth rates, higher GDP, modern medicines, all of which they wouldn't have today without colonialism. But Europeans are consistently seen as evil predators that must redistribute their wealth because they stole everything from other cultures. My entire education had a purpose. It was designed to teach me to hate my race, to hate capitalism. We've always been the conquerors and never the conquered. Meanwhile, a quick Google search into the Barbary slave trade disproves that theory in a matter of seconds. Or how one of the largest colonizers of all time was the Turkish Empire, and how the most brutal slave trade of all was the Arab slave trade of blacks. I heard it said that the dumbest in our society are the most educated. As someone with a master's degree, who would still believe all this cultural Marxist garbage, if I hadn't discovered the alternative media or taken the red pill, I can safely say that is completely true.
This is SailorDeer, and today I wanted to talk about my personal journey about going from blue-pilled to red-pilled. So back when I was in high school, I was pretty apolitical, unless it had to do with gays getting equal rights to marriage, and that was the only issue I cared about. But something that kind of happened with this gradual shift of Tumblr over the years was something that just was like solely fandoms. Everyone started branching out into social justice, because a lot of these nerdy type people had these problems that they just wanted to blog about. So they started blogging about this, and I would see it. So I feel like I got sucked into it, and I was getting brainwashed. There was something that I think a lot of people forgot about, is this debate between True Scum and Too Cute. And True Scum, which I guess I still am, is where you believe someone can only be trans if they have gender dysphoria. And Too Cute means you can choose your gender. Doesn't matter if you have dysphoria or not. You can say you're partially a boy even if you're not. I saw this Too Cute thing as really weird because you can choose your gender, but saying you're gay or straight, you can't choose. You were born that way. So which is it? You're born one and you can choose the other, or I don't even know. It's just really stupid. And with going to poll, that's when the real red pilling kind of began. I started seeing how much of a crook Hillary Clinton was. WikiLeaks was getting released. I was on all those threads on poll about how she's laundering money.
And then, Pizzagate was happening. I also was seeing stuff about how Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization. Blacks are only 12% of the population, but commit 50% of the crimes. Bad stuff about the Democratic Party. It just kind of blew my mind.
Why didn't I know this shit before? And it didn't stop there. I saw the craziness that was happening in Europe with the refugee crisis there. People who say they're refugees but aren't really refugees. They're all a bunch of military-aged men coming there for economic gibs. But also to commit terrorist attacks, as they have been happening quite frequently. Nobody in my friend circle or on Tumblr would ever talk about this stuff. Oh, you can't say bad things about the minorities. Like, oh my gosh, my whole worldview has changed. But even after the election, the red pilling didn't stop there. And my red pill journey is definitely far from over. There's still lots of stuff I have to learn. So I would encourage all of you to do your own research on things that you are questioning. Who knows, your whole worldview might get changed too.
Hey guys, Leroy Jenkins here. I want to talk today about how I got red pilled. So originally, I was very leftist, very progressive, to the point where I was actually even part of Occupy Wall Street. I was boarding a bus, but the way that boarding a bus people were being treated by the Clinton crowd was, we don't need you, go away. So they went away. Some of them went to third parties, some of them went to Trump, and Trump was welcoming them with open arms, saying that the DNC cheated you, the DNC lied to you, the DNC is a bunch of crooks. Come to us, what do you have to lose? And so I started talking to some Trump people, and they were very understanding and very kind. And once Trump won, even though I didn't vote for him, the responses I got were, we lost because of you, what did you do? A few moments ago you told us you didn't need us, and now you're angry at us for not supporting your candidate? And now also I'm a sexist for not supporting Clinton, even though all the countless reasons why I didn't like her. It's like everyone forgot. It really is like everyone forgot why they wanted Bernie over Hillary in the beginning. It just shocked me how people just absolutely forgot all the lies, the crookedness, the corporate greed, and they just turned a blind eye to it so they could go against Trump, who welcomed everyone. I mean, in the Donald subreddit, gays are welcomed, blacks are welcomed, everyone's welcomed, but if those people go outside, they're told they're stupid or blinded or something, and they're just treated badly. And it just goes back to the whole thing I said before, like, you're with us or against us. And it just didn't make any sense. That was something that made me start to think you're not as tolerant as you say you are. That you used to be the side of tolerance. It's all emotions, it's no logic. And as soon as you go against them, you're labeled a Nazi. And it's okay to punch a Nazi. Like that video of that guy who was supposedly a neo-Nazi getting punched out. People were sharing it saying, oh, it's okay to punch him, he's a Nazi. Like, what are these people going to be capable of? They've already killed someone at a Trump protest rally. Some guy was stabbed to death. And it's starting to get violent. I'm afraid to tell my friends that I like Trump. I'm worried that they'll think I'm racist or a bigot or something. I think that the left needs to tone things down a bit before I could join them again. I honestly feel like I didn't leave the left left me. It's a scary time.
Hello once again from the Prim Reaper. One thing that I thought that you might be interested in was my first negative experience with feminism that I can recall. This happened years ago, early in my bachelor's degree for psychology. One course that I chose was an introductory sociology class. As I recall, one of the assignments involved writing a paper discussing the notion that women are considered the other in a lot of research that's performed. That is, men are considered the default category and women are considered secondary. When I wrote the paper, I set about arguing against the main point. Mistake! In all my other papers in the course, non-feminist topics of course, I'd received low 90s, high 80s. When this paper came back, 72%. A lot of the feedback she'd given me was talking about debunked issues like the wage gap, or was making claims like sexism against women is somehow more serious than sexism against men. I did manage to find the email that I sent to her challenging a lot of her comments. I'm happy to report that she did wind up raising the grade from a 72% to an 80%. Still lower than most of my other papers, but I still considered it a success. So yeah, I consider this my first personal negative experience with feminism, and is probably the catalyst for why I began looking into it more and seeing more and more things that I disagreed with.
Hey guys, I often ask you guys what you want to hear about in my next video, and much to my surprise, you voted for my red pill story. I had a government public education from kindergarten through college. I always loved school, I got good grades, was in a bunch of extracurricular activities, and I took what I was taught at face value, at least until college. Because St. Louis inner city schools were so bad from elementary school on, my district bussed in hundreds of students from the worst areas of St. Louis City. I did not see a lot of racism, so as a child, I was not really concerned about it. But I did notice that there were large differences in demeanor, behavior, and family life between suburban and city students. Even as a high schooler, I began questioning why, despite being given equality of opportunity, there was voluntary segregation by the Black community. I knew it wasn't institutional because the administration had been incredibly accommodating, and I knew it wasn't white racism because none of the white people I knew were racist. After college, I moved to New York City and worked in finance until I was about 24, maybe a little bit before I turned 24. And this was really the most important part of my red pilling. By the time I was at the tail end of 23, I really saw what the end stage of corporate success was like because I worked with so many women and feminists. If you're successful in a high-powered job, all that's waiting for you at the end is 80-hour work weeks and the inevitable decision to quit, lest I lose my opportunity for having children or become a neglectful working mom. I moved to Los Angeles, got a lower-paying, less stressful job, I quit drinking, and most importantly, I really set off on a journey of self-improvement. I tried to be more feminine and just generally a better and kinder person. I also began to eat well, exercise, and just take care of myself and my relationships like an adult. When I became a better person, no coincidence that I was becoming much more conservative. The pressures of my life, my propensity to refuse to accept personal responsibility, relationship issues that I had because I was too dominant, all of these things really smoothed out. That's how you know you're moving in the right direction in life and you have adopted some of the right ideologies. Watching gender confusion unfold in an unprecedented way has really served to red pill me. This issue is particularly pronounced in Seattle, where even those that are not trans typically are drawn towards the mannerisms of the opposite gender. There are tons of women in Seattle, not just lesbians, that are masculine, domineering, short-haired, don't care about their personal appearance. In contrast, there's a huge number of straight men in Seattle that are extremely effeminate, meek, submissive, and very conscious of their personal appearance. And we can't call it a mental illness anymore, although it obviously is, because leftists have created coastal microcosms where all expressions of individuality, no matter how dysfunctional and warped, must be accepted as normal behavior. That is how people get red-pilled. One day the left goes too far and you can no longer believe their bullshit. It has been a process of many years, but I'm so thankful that I came to these realizations. For the first time in my life, I'm satisfied with the work that I do and I feel like I'm contributing something. In my personal life, my friendships and relationships are so much better, and I'm getting married and I'm very optimistic about my future and having a family soon. I would have been a liability in my marriage and relationships if I hadn't abandoned my leftist principles.
B. Tatum, man, what's your red pill moment? I think I had more of that I took the red pill and it took time to digest. I was born and raised as a Democrat. You black, you're a Democrat. The Republicans don't like black people. They're not going to do anything for you. You're a Democrat. And I always felt this victim mentality. I just always felt like no matter what you do in life, you still a brother. I think what made the biggest difference leaving the environment that I was in and leaving and going to college. In college, I studied African American studies. When I first completed a few courses in African American studies, I'm not gonna lie, man, I had this serious anxiety and frustration and hatred towards white people. I used to walk down the walkway and I made up in my mind, I'm never gonna move. I'm just gonna walk straight. If I run into somebody, oh well, too bad. I wanted my power back as a black man. Over time, I started realizing that all my teammates are cool. All my professors have been cool with me. I have never ran into a white person I felt was racist against me. That was the first component, moving out of the neighborhood I grew up in. The second one was that I got saved. But I'm a Christian, I got saved, baptized in Jesus' name, filled with the Holy Spirit at Emmanuel Grace Apostolic Church. So I got saved and it really revolutionized my life. I understood that it's not about color. All of us are God's children. I looked at people based on the spirit behind what they're doing and not necessarily the color of their skin. And like Martin Luther King, the content of their character. The third major thing, I became a police officer. And I'm telling y'all, when I became a police officer, man, huge myths about police just went out of the window. Police being racist. Oh, they pull you over for no reason. I used to hardcore believe in. When I became a police officer, I was just like, I can't believe I ever said that. It's almost impossible to do that. It's almost never happens. I'm sure there's some racist people out there that just want to pull you over because you're black, Hispanic, white, you rich, poor, whatever. People have their own biases. But for me, I was like, that's definitely not the case. You know, seeing a white officer and Officer Payne, who gave me my first ride along, just revolutionized the way I thought about police. I'll tell you what, one of my best friends, Steve Parker, because he would always tell me, B, the Democratic Party don't really align with your principles. I always used to fight him on that. And then over time, I started to realize, like, yeah, I'm a Christian and I don't think that they view Christianity or they love God the way I do. You know, I'm not really big on taxes. I'm not big on anti-police rhetoric. And then Barack Obama, obviously, he just assassinated his character, in my opinion, when he started talking about police officers in a very negative way without any information or facts. Sending White House personnel to Michael Brown's funeral was nearly the coffin for me. And then the nail on the coffin, even more so, was when he endorsed Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders is no different than Hillary Clinton, is no different than Barack Obama. All these people are anti-police. All these people seem to be communists and anti-American. They don't want to secure the borders. They want to raise our taxes. They don't care about the black community. Most of the impoverished black communities are run by Democrats. You talk about the murder capital of the country goes back and forth between Chicago and Baltimore, and both of them are run by Democrats. You know, all of these negative things are pointing towards the Democratic Party. The fact that they founded the Ku Klux Klan, the fact that they was against almost every single civil right or against the civil rights movement. They were for the Jim Crow. They were against the desegregation of schools. I was just being brainwashed this whole time. So I said, you know what, I'm going to see what the Republicans have to offer. I started to look at Ben Carson. Ben Carson was my man. And then Donald Trump just blazed the scene, you know, and I went to a rally. Like his speech was just, it blew my socks off. I thought this man was a racist. I thought he was going to be saying all this inflammatory stuff. And when I actually heard him for myself, I'm like, this is another thing I've been lied to my whole life about. I feel like I woke up.
I grew up in Detroit. I grew up in an environment where you were supposed to be Democrat, where they told you that Republicans were evil people and that they were racist. And, you know, later on, I started listening to Ronald Reagan, and I said, he doesn't sound like an evil person. He doesn't sound racist. What he's saying makes absolutely perfect sense. And then I coupled that with seeing these patients coming in, almost all of them on some kind of medical assistance and on social welfare programs, and their lives were in shambles. And then I see people who came from the same environment who were doing perfectly fine, but they were people who grasped the significance of personal responsibility and hard work. And I realized that one system was pushing people toward failure under the guise of compassion.
My name is Elbert Guillory, and I'm the senator for the 24th District right here in beautiful Louisiana. Recently, I made what many are referring to as a bold decision to switch my party affiliation to the Republican Party. It is the right decision, not only for me, but for all my brothers and sisters in the black community. Somehow it's been forgotten that the Republican Party was founded in 1854 as an abolitionist movement with one simple creed, that slavery is a violation of the rights of man. The Democrat Party has created the illusion that their agenda and their policies are what's best for black people. Programs such as welfare, food stamps, these programs aren't designed to lift black Americans out of poverty. They were always intended as a mechanism for politicians to control the black community. The economy must remain free of government persuasion. The press must operate without government intrusion. Emails and phone records of Americans should remain free from government search and seizure. Parents must be the decision makers in regards to their children's education. The individual must be free to pursue his or her own happiness, because to be truly free is to be reliant on no one other than the author of our destiny. These are the ideas at the core of the Republican Party, and it is why I am a Republican. So my brothers and sisters of the American community, please join with me today in abandoning the government plantation. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
That was David Mamet. He's also the author of American Buffalo, The Spanish Prisoner, more than 50 other plays and movies. He's lived and worked in the middle of that brain-dead liberal Hollywood culture for 40 years.
Well, what changed me is I met a couple of conservatives, and I realized I'd never met any conservatives in my life. And then I met a fellow who was a very nice fellow, who was a neighbor, and when I moved to Los Angeles, and I said, oh, you know, which of the Democrats are you voting for? And he said, well, I'm not voting for any of the Democrats. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, please forgive me for, and I admired the man, and I started giving him books about liberalism, because I thought, such a nice guy on the road to ruin, on the road to perdition. And so he started sending me books, and his books made sense to me, and they made more sense than my books. Originally, the first conservative book I think I ever wrote was Shelby Steele's A White Guilt, which led me to the works of Tom Sowell, and through them, fairly simultaneously, to Hayek and to Milton Friedman.
So you suddenly wake up, you write a book about it now called The Secret Knowledge.
Yeah.
And Hayek, it wasn't in The Road to Serfdom, in one of his other books, explains the secret knowledge, but I'll let you do that.
Well, the idea was that what Hayek is talking about is that we have to have a constrained vision of the universe, the unconstrained vision. The liberal vision is that everything can be done. Everything is accomplished.
Can be planned.
Well, that can be accomplished. We can cure polio, cure AIDS, cure poverty, cure all disease, cure unemployment. We have that power. And he says, it's just not true. He says, we don't have the knowledge. He says, you have to have a constrained vision. There's only so much that government can do.
How does somebody who was brought up by American communists and was a founder of the radical movement in the 60s wind up voting for Ronald Reagan and identifying with conservatives today? In 1973, I was introduced to the Black Panther leader Huey P. Newton in his Oakland penthouse apartment. Huey had come out of prison and said it's time to put away the gun and time to serve the people. So I got involved and I raised about $100,000 and bought a church in the heart of the inner city, which was used as a school. I named it the Oakland Community Learning Center, and I hired the bookkeeper, a woman, a mother of 3 children who had kept the books for me at Ramparts. And in 1974, Betty Van Patter was murdered by the Black Panther Party. The police were paralyzed, the press was uninterested, and the reality was that the left had so reshaped American culture that it was almost impossible to convict a black murderer, provided the black murderer positioned himself either as a champion of the oppressed, or if his defense attorneys would present him as a victim of police brutality, racist police repression, and racist America. You know, Huey Newton actually used to pick white juries, because the white juries would not understand, as I didn't understand, that he was a street thug and a hustler. Liberal racism, I would say, is probably the most significant problem we have in this country. This patronizing attitude towards minorities, that they can't live up to the same moral standards as the rest of us. I told the daughter of the woman who was murdered, and she did not believe me, that it was the Black Panthers. Because, what she said to me is they're good people. It took me about 7 years to work through all the issues involved. And I interviewed Don Francis, who was a hero of Randy Schilt's film, and the band played on. I said, you knew that you had a series of big epidemics running through the gay community. Why didn't you do something about it? When I was a youngster, we had a polio epidemic. They shut down the public swimming pools. Why didn't you close these bathhouses? He said, oh, because that would be interfering with an alternative lifestyle. In other words, the liberals, the left, the Democratic Party has so intimidated and so converted, if you will, our public health officials to the politically correct view that we shouldn't mention the fact that AIDS is caused by promiscuous anal sex. We shouldn't involve ourselves in this liberated zone that the gay liberation movement has created, that they were willing to sacrifice the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. That convinced me that the left is a menace to public health, to our health, and at the health of our society in all its senses. And that's why in 1984, I became a conservative.
I never thought of myself as left-wing. Never. I thought of myself as what we call in Britain liberal, kind of middle of the road, sensible, tolerant, decent, wanting the best for my fellow human beings, wanting to make a better world, wanting to stand up for the vulnerable, and so on. And I went to work for The Guardian newspaper, which is it's the very heart of left-wing media in Britain. And possibly because I was working at The Guardian, my political views did change. What I came to realize while I was working there was that people I assumed were on my side in this great endeavour, they were not concerned with bettering the lot of their fellow human beings. They were concerned with bettering themselves, and they were concerned only with their own reputation and with their own sense of themselves as being noble and virtuous and wise and great, and everybody else could basically take a running jump. And when I realised that they were on the other side and actually had, I thought, very illiberal views, very intolerant views, despite what they said, and didn't actually care about the people at the bottom of the heap, the little people, that's when I realised that actually we were on different sides. What changed for me, and it was a dramatic, seismic change, was that I came to believe that the reasons why the world was as it was rather different to what I had originally thought it to be. The idea of truth, objective truth, has been to a very large extent replaced by ideology. I mean, there was a great movement of thought, mainly in our universities from which it originated some years ago, that we are in a postmodern age. And what postmodernism meant was that there is no such thing as objective truth. If you think that there is such a thing as objective truth, well, basically you're pretty stupid. You're not really properly educated, because we all know, because we're all very clever, that everything's a matter of opinion. You say this is the case, I say no it's not, that's your opinion. Well, if there's no such thing as truth, then there's no such thing as lies, and consequently we're living in an era where people, I think, are very susceptible and very suggestible to lies and propaganda. They can no longer distinguish between truth and lies. Because there's no such thing as truth, what's come in is kind of power. No such thing as truth. My opinion is the same as your opinion. Everything's a matter of opinion, everything is relative. So what then happens is that I'm going to show that my view of the world is going to win over your view of the world. So it becomes a contest of power groups, if you like. And all these ideologies are power groupings, all these isms, scientism, the belief that there is absolutely nothing in the world, universe and beyond that can't be explained by actual empirical, demonstrable facts and evidence. There's nothing beyond ourselves, nothing beyond the material world. Utilitarianism, the belief that the only thing that matters is the happiness of the greatest number, and consequently there is no intrinsic value in human life. The only thing that matters is whether people generally are happy. Environmentalism. Environmentalism says the planet is about to fry, we're all going to hell on a handcart because man-made global warming. And, you know, there's a bunch of evidence which says actually that's not necessarily true. But people who believe in these isms, like environmentalism, like scientism, they start with the conclusion. They don't start with the evidence and reach the conclusion. They start with the conclusion and they say the evidence has to be wrenched to fit. There are numerous examples of this actually happening, to the extent that the exercise becomes literally fraudulent, intellectually fraudulent, where so-called reputable academics have basically told people lies about what the evidence is in order that it shall fit the conclusion. And this is a really terrible thing because it causes such confusion in our society. Most people have no idea that they're being lied to, that what they're reading and what they're being told isn't actually following the evidence where it leads. It's starting with a conclusion and then selecting certain facts to build up the idea that this is actually true, but it's not true.
I had not yet realized that the left's aggression towards any dissent or challenge is essentially defensive. They are either guilty about what they are doing because they know it is wrong, or else at some level at least, they know that their intellectual position is built on sand.
One of the hallmarks of the political discourse on the left of politics, certainly in Britain, is the extreme aggression with which they conduct political discussion. They don't have an argument. They don't say to me, your argument is wrong and this is why it's wrong. They don't have that discussion at all. They simply use abuse. Gratuitous abuse, and the purpose of the abuse is to shut down the argument, is to tell other people, don't even listen to what she's saying, she's really dangerous, she's really horrible, she's really of no account at all. It seems to me that the reason why people want to shut down a debate before it even starts, what they're frightened of is that they will lose the argument. In other words, they don't actually have the confidence of their own convictions. They don't actually have the confidence they can win an argument, from which I conclude their argument is actually built on sand.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. Now,
does any of the blame belong to you?
Yes, because for many years I was a Democrat.